Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Psychosin Psychoanalysis here on the Psychosin Project YouTube channel. And today I'm going to be reviewing the brand new album by English extreme metal band Cradle of Filth. Now, usually I do a sort of about the band, but most of you know who they are. Quick sort of summary: Cradle of Filth formed in Suffolk back in 1991. The new album, which I'm reviewing today, Hammer the Witches, is their 11th album and is going to be released worldwide today, I believe, but it's been released today in the UK. I'm not sure if it's been released earlier over in America or something. It's entirely possible. But yep, they've done 11 previous albums. They've pretty much known as one of the top sort of UK extreme metal bands, and I'm going to go into now, well, two things. One, why is it taking me so long to do another review? Basically, I've had a few technical issues with my computer, along with doing, obviously, the radio show and trying to arrange interviews with other bands. As you saw, I've done the interview with Cobra and Lotus last week. Also, there's been a bit of that, along with still trying to find a job as well, because obviously, so far, this isn't bringing any money in for me, so I've got to go out there and find a job and all that. But anyway, let's get on to Cradle of Filth. Now, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Cradle of Filth were probably one of my favourite bands. Absolutely loved them. What really was the breakthrough point for me was when they released in 1998 an album called Cruelty and the Beast, which to this very day I will say is still the best thing they have ever done. They then followed that up with Midian, which pretty much blew them out of the bloody stratosphere. They got huge. Kerrang was playing their music video for Her Ghost in the Fog, probably their most well-known tune, and the whole album itself, although it seemed to have a bit of a commercial bent to it in a weird way, it still retained all the really good elements of Cruelty and the Beast, although not quite matching them, but it was definitely up there. But then, after that, for me personally, they started to sort of slide off a bit. They released Damnation a Day, which I'll give to them was a very ambitious album to do, but about 79 minutes long. Maybe it was a bit overly long, and I never really got into it. To me, it seemed a little bit like they were trying too hard to be, well, let's face it, they've been dogged by this for most of their later career. Seemed to me like they were trying a little bit too much to be an English version of Dimmu Borgir. Now, the problem there, for me personally, is I've never been a fan of Dimmu Borgir. I have their albums. I've liked maybe one or two, but overall, their albums generally kind of bore me. I know they're a good band. I know, obviously, they're better than quite a lot of bands, but for some reason, there's just something missing with their albums. Same with Cradle of Filth and their later albums. Anything from Damnation a Day onward hasn't really done much for me, although there was a glimmer of hope in, I believe it was 2004, when they released Amphetamine, which, looking back on it, it seemed like it was an attempt to sort of recapture the glory of Midian and Cruelty and the Beast to kind of mixed success. It still had, it was a brilliant album, don't get me wrong, but it weren't quite up there to the heights they'd set themselves with, obviously, Cruelty and the Beast, which, as I said, is my favourite album by them still. In fact, for me, that is one of the best black metal albums ever, and this was the other problem with Cradle of Filth any time after Midian, is that they, even Danny has admitted this, they've strayed away and stopped being a black metal band. They're now more of an extreme metal, sort of more traditional kind of metal band. But that doesn't mean that Danny Phil's got to start doing Iron Maiden style vocals or anything. It's just they've gone for a more, I suppose you could call it streamlined sound, I suppose. The last two albums, Darkly Venus Versa, was average, and then the last album, Manticore and Other Horrors, was a bit punky, actually. It was a bit more sort of upbeat, which was a bit weird to hear. But it's one that I could probably grow to like, but again, wasn't absolutely spellbinding. So hopefully, with a change of label, because they went from Roadrunner onto the new album, new label, sorry, which is Nuclear Blast Records. This is their first release with Nuclear Blast Records. They'll hopefully be going back to their older sound, or will have refined their newer sound into something that's above average, because really they need to do something special, because I think even hardcore Cradle of Filth fans have to admit, recently, the last 10 years, they have kind of fallen off a bit in quality, as it were. Again, this is all my personal opinion. I don't mind, obviously, if you want to attack me, You gotta do it, whatever I say in the YouTube comments. But that's how I feel about Cradle of Filth. I'm not saying they're a bad band by any sort of measure. As I said, I used to love them. Absolutely used to love them. They were like my number 2 best bands. Favourite band obviously is always going to be Fear Factory, but UK bands wise, they were my number 1 favourite band, quickly followed by 1 Minute Silence. So it's been a bit of a shame for me to see them sort of decline in quality, for me to sort of go off them a bit. However, I'm going to approach this new album, Hammer the Witches, with an open mind, and we'll see how it goes. So let's dive straight into this. So the first track is Walpurgis Eve. I think that's how it's pronounced. And as with every Cradle of Filth album, it is your typical mood-setting intro with the fades in and sort of builds up to a crescendo. It's only a minute and a half long, so not a lot I can say, but great use of orchestration on this, great swelling up of keyboards and everything to do. There is one thing I have to say, Cradle of Filth always do superb instrumental tracks to either break up the middle of the album or for intros and outros, and this is another one that I can definitely put up there as an absolute winner as an intro track to set you up for the mood of the album. The first proper track on the album is Yours Immortally, and this starts off at a fast pace with double kicking drums and fast guitar, and all throughout it there's superb use of sort of backing vocals, like female backing vocals, like in the old days with when they had Sarah Jezebel Dava as still part of the band. And there's definitely a hint all throughout this song of going back to that old sort of Cruelty and the Beast style sound. I'm hoping this is something that continues. Honestly, as a first track on the album, it's probably the best one I've heard them do since, well, Nymphetamine and Gilded Cunt. Let's be honest, that was a superb opener on that album as well. But this, yeah, I'm surprised. I was unsure how this would turn out, but yeah, it's a very good opener. Let's hope the album continues this way. The third track on the album is Enshrined in Crematoria. Now this switches between a slow sort of lumbering mid-paced riff. Slow mid-paced? Sorry, a mid-paced lumbering style riff, and goes into a more thrashier, faster sort of, I don't know whether I call it a black metal riff, but a kind of Iron Maiden-ish cross with a little bit of black metal style riff, if you know what I mean. When you hear it, you'll know what I mean. But anyway, along with Danny's vocals, mainly going for the more low growly vocals on this than his more sort of patented high-pitched screams. For some reason, that was a hard sentence for me to say there. Quite a good little song this, actually. Really, really good riff on this. I've quite enjoyed it. There is one thing I am noticing with the song so far. I wasn't sure if it was just the first song, but to me it seems a little bit like every now and again the drums might be up a little bit too loud in the mix, because sometimes the riff is getting a little bit lost under the drumming. We'll see how that goes on with the rest of the album, but that is a slight concern. It might just be me, I don't know. I am listening to this through computer, I'm forgetting words today, this is good, isn't it? Through computer speakers, there we go. Well, I'll say computer speakers hooked into the laptop. So it might be something to do with that, but all in all, yeah, not bad song at all. Not as good or as brilliant as the first song was, but all in all, yeah, nothing too amazingly bad or terribly disappointing yet, honestly. This is on track to be an above average, if not a very good album, so we'll see how it goes. Up next is Deflowering the Maidenhead, Displeasuring the Goddess. Again, we're straight into higher speed metal on this track. I do say metal, not black metal, because if any track really solidifies that Cradle of Filth are no longer a black metal band, it's probably this track. This is 6 minutes and 53 seconds of pure sort of extreme metal riffs and drumming, although there is a lot of use of gothic style keyboards at the beginning and all throughout this song, which is quite nice, bringing to mind the glory days of, say, Dusk and Her Embracing, again, Cruelty and the Beast. Nice change of pace throughout the song as well, giving it a bit of variety as well over the 6 minutes 53, a little bit of a prog feel going on as well, and all in all, actually really, really good song. almost as good again. Pretty much as good as the very first song on the album, not the intro song, the actual first proper song. I actually quite enjoyed this. I'm quite surprised. The reason I'm surprised is, as I said, I really haven't enjoyed the last few Cradle of Filth albums that much. So for them to come out with this and the first three songs to pretty much kind of blow me away a little bit, because this is really sort of maybe they realised that they were kind of losing their grip on their own sound a bit, and they're starting to try and get it back. Hopefully this will continue throughout the album, but yeah, this is a winner with me, this track. One I might end up playing on my radio show. We shall see. Anyway, on to the next track. Blackest Magic in Practice is the next song, and this is another song that brings to mind memories of Caught in the Beast. They've got a really, really nice sort of guitar melody going throughout this entire song, and in the middle of the song there's a nice little bass break as well. However, I don't know what it was, but with this song, even though it's a nice little slow number, it didn't really do much for me personally. It kind of seemed to lumber on a bit, maybe a little bit too long. Maybe it's one that will grow on me the more I hear it, but on the first listening it kind of lost my interest about halfway through. But there is superb guitar playing as always. Danny's vocals, I finally got that sentence out, doing a superb job of adding to the atmosphere with his low growling voice that he seems to be doing more and more on this album than I've probably heard him do for a while. And like I said, the guitar melody that keeps recurring and coming back on this is pretty damn good, and brings to mind something like Cruelty and the Orchids from Cruelty and the Beast, and that recurring guitar melody that kept coming throughout the entire album. But as I said, I don't know what it is, but there's just something about this song didn't quite click with me as much as the previous four songs did. Not to say that it's a terrible song or anything. It's definitely still leaps ahead of anything they did on Pornography, and I've got to be honest, Pornography was one of the worst albums that I've ever heard Cradle do. No offence to Cradle themselves, I'm sure they put a lot of work and passion into that album, but for me personally, and a lot of other people who I know listened to it at the time, didn't come across as a good album. And this song, just don't know how to put it. Not bad song, not terrible, but so far probably the worst song on the album. But again, as I said, not a terrible song by any means, just seemed a little bit too lumbering at the moment. But there you go, I suppose it could be setting up the mood for the following tracks. We shall see. The next track is The Monstrous Sabbat, or Summoning the Coven. Sorry, I had to look it up on the screen then. This is another 2-minute sort of interlude, instrumental interlude, that mainly consists of a lone, it sounds like a harp playing a rather nice little tune, melody, backed up by occasional violin, and then it swells up and up at the end into a choir, and indeed loads of violins joining it as well, until we're back to just the harp again to lead us through into the rest of the album. Up next is the title track of the album, going to a bit of a mid-paced speed on this song. Jesus Christ, as usual I'm forgetting the English language. Anyway, got a nice little bit of an Iron Maiden vibe going on here with the riffs and the sort of guitar solos that go on in this, but overall not a bad song at all. Still not quite as good as those first four songs, but all in all, yeah, pretty good. Although I do feel the album's starting to sort of wane a bit. Hopefully the next few tracks will start picking it up again, but we shall see. Track 8 is the first single from the album, which was released about a month ago, called Right Wing of the Garden Triptych. Now, many of you already know this song, you probably would have seen the video and heard it. Obviously, as many of you may know, it starts a little bit worryingly with a bit of a techno dance beat. Not sure what's going on there. Thankfully, that ends very quickly. It doesn't come back at all during the entire song. But that does lead us into some female vocals that sort of sing the title of the song, and then into a raging guitar sort of riff. And the song sort of goes into something that sounds a little bit like the song Single Nymphetamine, while also being its own thing and having some really, really great riffs and drumming, some power sort of changes of pace again. And again, Danny sort of going for more of a low vocal on this song than anything else. But it's an interesting choice as the first lead single from the album, because it doesn't really sound that much like the rest of the album, and a lot of people who listened to it probably got put off by the first 30 seconds because of that techno dance beat, because I haven't used that anywhere else on the album. So not sure what's going on there, but all in all, not a terrible song. Still not as brilliant as those first four, but there we go. We are coming to the last two songs on the album now, so let's get to it. Track 9 is The Vampire, or Vampire at my side, depending on how you personally pronounce it. Now this one is a straightforward, very fast, raging track really. It has some mid-pace bits as well, but honestly it's an absolutely superb, straightforward metal sort of attack on this track. Brings back, there's an over sort of arcing sense of melancholy to the sound of this track. Danny puts in a fantastic vocal performance in here. There's little splashes of Iron Maiden in there, some of their influence obviously coming through, but this is really a straightforward metal track passed through the Cradle of Filth filter, if you know what I mean. So there's little splashes of maybe a little bit of black metal and a lot of traditional metal and extreme metal in there. So yeah, another good track. Probably getting back to almost being as good as those first four tracks on the album, so this is definitely heading back in the right direction. There's one more proper track left, so let's get on with it. Track number 10 on the album is Onward Christian Soldiers. Now this is your classic sort of high speed Cradle of Filth track. Very much appreciated actually. I haven't heard them sort of go all out in this fashion for a fair while, and it's good to hear that they can still pull it off with nice little keyboard embellishments as well, along with some superb drumming. Again, it's happening all through the album. There's that slight issue with the drumming, maybe a little bit too high in the mix, and every now and again it drowning out bits of the riffing. But apart from that, Danny's on top vocal form in this song. It's got very much a progressive element as well, because it goes through, I suppose you call it, different movements throughout the almost 7 minutes of this song, and it's your typical Cradle of Filth epic album closer. Well, say album closer, there is indeed one tune left, one track. So let's get on to it, and then my conclusion. Oh, one other thing, there was a moment in this song where they brought back, they had a very un-goth, un-Cradle of Filth type keyboard sound happening for a couple of bars. Not sure what's going on there. Is this all leading up to some kind of, I don't know, cyber version of Cradle of Filth sound? Maybe? I don't know. I appreciate that they want to experiment and all that. They've been at this for, 24 years roughly, so you can't really blame for experimenting. It's just, when you hear this track, you'll hear it and you'll think, okay. So, yeah, watch out for that. Anyway, let's get on to the last track on the album. The last track on the album is Blooding the Hounds of Hell. Now this is your typical sort of epic album closer that Cradle of Filth always do so well, superbly utilising the talent of their keyboardist. This is a tune that would fit perfectly in, say, a Conan the Barbarian film. So honestly, an absolutely superb way and very epic way to close the album. It starts by continuing the outro from the previous song, and then goes into its own thing with the sound of church organs, and then the whole choir coming back in, building up to some massive crescendo, and then bringing the album to a close. So, all in all, what did I make of Hammer of the Witches by Cradle of Filth? Honestly, this is the most I've enjoyed a Cradle of Filth album since Nymphetamine, and that came out in 2004. So it's been a long time. I'm so glad to hear them sort of getting back on the right track, maybe even drifting more back towards a sort of black metal sound. We will see, because this really was a good album. Sure, there was a couple of tracks on there that didn't quite grab me as much as they could have, but there might be growers, there might be ones that I've got to listen to more than once. I mean, unlike the last few Cradle of Filth albums, this is an album I can see myself listening to more than twice. So that in itself is progress for me. Danny done a superb job with his vocals on this album. The guitarist absolutely superb. The drummer absolutely superb. Keyboardist really sort of showing her diversity in the sounds she chose for obviously the backing accompaniment on the tracks, as well as doing the interludes and the intro and outro of the album. Sure, there was those weird sort of techno bits that come in on 2 songs, but as I said, they're free to sort of experiment. They've been at this for a long bloody time, so you can't really blame them for it. Diversify their sound a bit. So all in all, I'll give this album about a 3.5 out of 5. Only it would be a 4, but as I said, there's those 2 free tracks that, for me personally, kind of dragged the album down a little bit. So 3.5. So it's over average. I'd probably say it's definitely well worth a listen. Definitely well worth giving a go, especially if you're like me, was a fan of Cradle of Filth, and then for the last 10 years or so haven't been as much of a fan because you found their output hasn't been as good as they used to be. This is definitely a step in the right direction. Anyway, I've been Psychosin. This has been Psychosin Psychoanalysis. If you wish to support the show and help me continue making the videos more often, as well as getting up to London and other places to do interviews with bands for your listening pleasure, just follow the link here and feel free to donate to my Patreon. I want to thank you very much for watching today, and I will be back very soon. I'm not going to leave it about a month or however long it's been since I last done a review. We'll have another one up soon. And starting as of this week, it's Fear Factory month. Why am I starting it this week? Well, because in just under a month, on the 7th of August, the brand new Fear Factory album, Genexus, will be out, and I think it's time for a review of their entire discography. So, that's all coming up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
I turn to